Welcome to the Student Center at Oak Grove School, and welcome to the KFA annual gathering. My name is Francisco Mazza, the Executive Director of the KFA, and I'm going to give a brief overview before we will have the first presentation at 10:30, and in between me speaking and the first presentation, we will have Karolina Kalo, a pianist, and she will play a piece, I think a short piece, in the morning. And then in the afternoon, there is a concert of 30 minutes. So first, this is my daughter. She's 2.5, and thanks to her, I've been endlessly listening to children's songs over and over and over, in the car, in the house, everywhere. So I started noting something about the lyrics, like this one. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Oh, so you know it. So the as you know it part is interesting, right? The song just doesn't wonder if you are happy only. It's also the condition for clapping is that you know that you are happy, and which is knowledge seems to be mediating the experience there, which is something that Krishnamurti spoke a lot about it. Here we are at the Santa Barbara Zoo. She seems to be happy with her cousins who don't look exactly like her. And hopefully she has started realizing that we are all part of the tree of life. But as social primates, one of our deepest concerns is what others think of us and where we stand in the social order. So another children's song that addresses that, We Are the Dinosaurs. And of course the last piece, What Do You Think of That, is also quite telling, I think. I think it points to our identity, which doesn't really stand alone. It's relational. We are constantly aware of how we appear to others, constructing and refining the perception of ourselves based on social feedback. Krishnamurti also spoke extensively about this process, how we create images of each other based on past interactions, memories, and accumulated judgments, and then relate to those images rather than to the actual person. So I think we do the same with ourselves. We create symbolic representations of our experiences. We also create symbolic representations of ourselves, which seems to be the ground for our sense of self. So there is something about paying attention to these songs. If you are too bored and if you have children, at least there is more to it that meets the eye. So worth discussing is that this image-making process, which is the same as a symbolic representation, doesn't seem to be a glitch, an error. It's a feature of our evolution. We are deeply wired for social hierarchy, status perception, and group belonging. What do you think of that? That phrase goes together with the question, who am I? These are regular processes that the brain or the mind engages on a day-to-day basis. So the question from there, I think, is what kind of education actually addresses this? I think any of these phenomena are worth learning about, understanding, and these are topics that Krishnamurti touches on when he discusses education. So that's the theme for this year, education and the significance of life. And that's the title of one of Krishnamurti's books as well. So why this theme and why now? Partly because this year is the 50th anniversary of Oak Grove School. Krishnamurti started the school in 1975 as an experiment at the time with the intention of discovering whether education could be something fundamentally different. So to talk about this topic creates some opportunities to inquire into what Krishnamurti meant by education in a deep sense, as a way of living and perceiving, to examine what it means to try to embody that intent in real institutions, like the school and the Krishnamurti Center, with all the complications and possibility that that entails, and to look honestly on what has been learned and what it has not, and what remains very difficult. So this is also an occasion, perhaps, to restate the question Krishnamurti asked in 1975. Can human beings learn in such a way that their lives are no longer shallow, frightened, fragmented, and destructive? So can human beings learn? That's the key word. What type of learning is that? There is another reason this theme feels important right now, beyond the school anniversary, and is the issue of AI, of course. Yeah, AI has arrived, artificial intelligence is here, and it's already reshaping the landscape of learning, teaching, and human development. Machines can now perform many of the operations that human thought performs at an extraordinary scale and speed. As an example, this is an article from 2024, actually. And in lay terms, maybe a bit of background, every cell in our body is run by proteins. These proteins shape, the shape of the protein, meaning how it falls in space, determines what it does. So if it falls wrongly, you get diseases like Alzheimer's, cancer. Figuring out the shape of just one protein used to take a scientist many years and cost hundreds and thousands of dollars. So after a global effort, science was able to map around 100,000 protein structures. Then Google DeepMind's machine, called AlphaFold, predicted over 200 million, essentially every known protein. This work would have taken hundreds of millions of researcher years. The latest version, AlphaFold 3, can also predict how proteins interact with DNA and drug molecules, which is transforming how we design new medicines. So this research won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2024. What does it mean for education? In regards to education, some things are already happening in schools. AI systems are now teaching core subjects, explaining concepts, grading work, adjusting to each student, all in real time. One-on-one tutoring, which used to require the human and was available only to those who could afford it, is now being done by AI in some schools, available to anyone at any time. In some settings, students spend only a small part of their day with an actual human teacher. The human relationship in learning is shrinking. So these are not logistical shifts, they are fundamental changes. So usually when things like that happen, the questions arise, existential questions come up. If machines can do much of what thought does, calculate, analyze, predict, what is the place of human thought in education? What is the difference between intellect, meaning the capacity to reason, which machines do very well, the difference between intellect and intelligence, which may be something very different? What is the difference between information processing and learning? A machine can process vast information. Does it learn in any meaningful sense? And maybe the most important question, what is it that a machine, however advanced, cannot do? From Krishnamurti's perspective, I don't think this is a question about technology. when machines can replicate the functions of thought, we have to ask, which he asked, what lies beyond thought? He spent some time looking at this question, and the rise of AI can be seen as an invitation to go deeper. We could take that route. Also, of course, part of the same question, what is an intelligence that is not of thought at all? Is there a form of intelligence that doesn't come from memory, that is not mechanical, that is not the product of conditioning? He suggested that there is, and said that discovering it is the whole point of education. So in some ways, everything Krishnamurti spoke about is education. Life is a movement in learning. That's something that he said over and over. So education can be expanded, for him to mean learning about ourselves, understanding conditioning, the quality of attention and perception, the nature of relationship, the role and limits of thought, the ending of the self, the possibility of freedom, the emergence of intelligence. These themes pervade Krishnamurti's work throughout. So in this sense, education is not primarily about schooling, careers, or achievement. Another question, another statement that maybe points us in the right direction. To understand life is to understand ourselves. And that is both the beginning and the end of education. I don't think this is poetic abstraction. I think it's a statement about the nature and purpose of learning. Self-knowledge is not one subject among many. It is the ground from which all genuine understanding arises. So it kind of works a bit like that. Don't take it, literal, but there's always more to all of this. Education seems to be the same as learning. Learning is understanding, and understanding is direct perception of oneself and life and everything. True learning is the perception of what is actually happening, but such direct perception can happen only in freedom from conditioning. So this leads to a tricky thing, maybe one of the most counterintuitive insights from Krishnamurti. Freedom is not the result of education, it's the beginning of it. Without freedom, there is no learning, there is only repetition. You can acquire information, you can develop skills, you can memorize and reproduce, but none of that is learning. He would also say freedom doesn't mean choice, it doesn't mean doing what you want, it doesn't mean independence or self-expression, it means something more radical, freedom from conditioning itself. Freedom from the patterns, the assumptions, the reactions that shape how we see everything. So I think we are saying that unless the mind is free from its own conditioning, it can only learn within the limits of what already knows. It can rearrange the furniture, but it never leaves the room. Can the mind be aware of its own conditioning then, and be free of it? I don't think we're going to answer that question this weekend, maybe, but the idea is to explore this together. So we have designed these 2 days of the gathering with that in mind. So instead of a series of independent talks, it's structured as a single arc of inquiry. Each presentation builds on the one before it. Each question opens into the next. So that so that by Sunday afternoon we have moved through a complete exploration together. So in order to give some structure, we identified a few core themes for this gathering. The first presentation, starting after me, and actually after Karolina's piece, is The Significance of True Learning in Our Lives by Mary Kelly. Then we will move to Conditioning and the Individual with Connie Jones. Then we have lunch. And then we will come back here for an inquiry into the nature of the self with Patik. He's a KFA trustee. On Sunday, we start in the morning with Thought and Observation by David Moody. Then Intelligence, Goodness, and the School with Siddhartha. And then in the afternoon, we have a panel discussion by Oak Grove School with Jody Grass, Meredith Benson-Rice, and Karen Hesley. And at the very end of the day, we always leave this at the end, and when everybody's kind of gone, we have the discussion of the core mission of the KFA, but if you want to stay, please stay. We will have some trustees and some staff discussing what we are doing. And basically, maybe what's left to say is, so ideally this gathering is not meant to transmit conclusions or promote views or showcase expertise. It's meant to create the conditions for a shared inquiry into these themes and to let the form of the gathering embody that inquiry. So if it works or not, it probably is not because of the speakers or the program. I think it depends on something less predictable, whether we can enter into a different quality of attention and questioning in these 2 days. I think that's the invitation. So with that in mind, we're now going to listen to Karolina Kalo, beautiful piece of music, and immediately after that, Mary Kelly. I can say something about Karolina. She is based in Los Angeles. She's a concert pianist, recording artist, and composer, whose artistry spans classical and contemporary realms. So, thank you.
Buddy. I'm John, and I'm here to introduce our first presenter, Mary Kelly, to you a little bit. Bio here, which I'll share with you, that her inspiration, she's a teacher at the Oak Grove School,